we don't really like drama, but at the same time, I think a lot of us do. You know, we say that we don't like it, but we kind of like to watch it or consume it. I found a couple of things that I want to share with you, and I have to tell you this. I've been restraining myself for the many months that I'm here with us so far, but I love memes. It's how I communicate, pictures with words on them. So I have a couple memes that I want to share with you to this effect about us loving drama or not loving it. The first one, by the way, they all involve cats tonight. So let's take a look at the first of the meme. So the person's saying, I hate drama. But in the meantime, drama's happening and we're peeking around the corner. Along the same lines, I have another meme, also cat-oriented. I hate drama. I want to live a peaceful life. Also me when the drama starts. Craning my neck over to look at it. There is undeniably an appetite for many of us to watch dramatic things happen. People fall off the rails and go crazy. And I want to share a cultural example of this with you right now. In 2006, a show started, and this show still exists to this day, and it is a show called The Real Housewives of, and then name a city afterward. And so the way that this show works is it follows these ladies, and essentially the entire purpose of the show is to gin up insane amounts of off-the-rails, crazy, yelling and screaming at each other. And the show went so well, I don't remember which one was the first season of it, but it went so well that in the intervening years, we now have Real Housewives of New York, Beverly Hills, Atlanta, Orange County, Salt Lake City. These are each independent shows of each other. Potomac, New Jersey, Miami, Washington, D.C., you thought I was done, Dallas, and just for good measure, Dubai. There were 27 spin-offs of this show that exist. Now, if you've ever seen these, they are insane. It's these grown women, and men in some cases, acting like children, yelling, screaming, being dramatic. There's obviously an appetite for it. People want to watch it. Now, I will tell you, this show has produced possibly my favorite meme I've ever seen in my life, and some of you may have seen this. Someone took a photo of one of the ladies in the show screaming at another one of the ladies, and then they made a side-by-side picture. Actually, we'll just look at it now. So she's screaming, and then it makes it look like she's screaming at a cat at the dinner table. Anyway, half of you were like, that's great, and half of you were like, what is going on right now? Anyway, there is an appetite for insane drama watching from people. Between things like these Real Housewives shows, the other thing from the last 20 years has been every iteration of the Kardashians, their shows. It's all mindless, horrible, pathetic, largely contrived drama for people to watch. Now, I don't want to just pick on the ladies, because men are also susceptible to this, and the easiest thing that I can think of as an example of this would be professional wrestling. What is professional wrestling? I'll let the cat out of the bag here if you don't know this already. Professional wrestling is a bunch of steroided up guys who grease themselves up and put on a soap opera in front of a bunch of screaming, chanting dudes after. That's what wrestling is. The parent company that owns WWE is now worth about $9 billion. So women do not have a monopoly on watching dramatics and wanting to watch it. Guys like to do the same thing. A buddy of mine that I work with now, he and I often make a joke about this. We are not confrontational people by nature, but the joke that we make is that when we watch or hear dramatic things going on in the office, we'll or just anywhere, we'll say, man, that's terrible. I would hate to hear more details about that. Oh, eating our popcorn as we watch it. Oh, man. You're not getting along with someone else at the office? I would hate to hear more intimate details of why that's happening. Oh, man. I didn't think through this before I started it, and now my mouth is full of popcorn. I'm going to need a moment. Probably going to choke on a kernel while I do this. There's a German word that describes this, though. Why is it that we like drama? I really do have a popcorn kernel in my throat. Why is it that we like watching other people experience drama? And there is a German word, and you may have heard it, you may not have, but the word is Schadenfreude, I think. I don't know how to speak German, but that's the word. What it means, if you were to translate it directly, it means damaged joy. It's like a compound word. And essentially what it is a word that means experiencing satisfaction or pleasure from the misfortune, hardship from another person. Schadenfreude. Now, the place that you might experience this the most often might be in politics. If there's a person that you disagree with politically and something bad happens with them, that there's a distinct enjoyment that a lot of people get out of watching that. So it's this experience. You see something bad happen to someone else, and you're like, oh, that's incredible. And I think that is a lot of times what's at the heart of people wanting to see dramatics. We don't want to experience it necessarily, but we want to see other people fall off the rails and look crazy. Now, why is it that we want that? I think there's a couple reasons that this might happen. One, all of us have an ingrained desire for justice, for people that have done wicked things to receive justice for what they've done. That is a natural, good part of the way God's made us. So if you read the Psalms, a lot of the Psalms say things like that. Lord, when are you going to judge the wicked? The other part of this, though, is this Schadenfreude comes to us when we have a person that we feel superior to, and then we see them stumble. Sometimes watching other people fall off the rails makes us feel better about ourselves. Now, another reason we might do this could be if there's someone that you are envious of for whatever reason, and you're envious of them, and then something bad happens to them, and then you're happy. So sometimes sports fans will see this. If there is a athlete on another team that they don't like, and that athlete has a bad game, they'll be like, oh, that feels great. And a lot of that, what that comes from, it's either stemming from arrogance, I think I'm better than this person, or envy. Now, clearly, this type of feeling is not in line with what God wants us to do. That's not how God wants us to live. It sometimes is natural for us to feel some sort of satisfaction from a wicked person stumbling, but you and I are not made to want to look at the dramatics and misfortune of other people's lives and enjoy it. That's not what we were designed for. And our passage today is going to give us a clue into what we should actually be like when the people around us stumble, when the people around us have difficulties in their lives. So we're going to pick up at the end of chapter 5 of Galatians and then the beginning of chapter 6. And so what I would like to do is read the entirety of it, so starting in verse 5, verse 26, and then I will read the first 5 verses. I still have popcorn kernels all over my teeth right now, but we're going to make it through. Okay, let's see, starting in verse 26. Let us not become boastful, challenging one another, envying one another. Brethren, even if anyone is caught in any trespass, you who are spiritual, restore such a one in a spirit of gentleness, each one looking to yourself, so that you will not be tempted. Bear one another's burdens, and thereby fulfill the law of Christ. For if anyone thinks he is something when he is nothing, he deceives himself. But each one must examine his own work, and then he will have reason for boasting in regard to himself alone, and not in regard to another. For each one will bear his own load. Now, keep in mind, what we've been reading in the most recent portion of Galatians is that Paul has laid out for us what the works of the flesh look like and the fruit of the Spirit. So he's given us lists of both of those things in the last chapter. Now, we start to see how he wants us to work out these things in our relationships to each other. So at the beginning, he says, we shouldn't become boastful, we shouldn't challenge one another, we shouldn't envy one another, but instead, do these things when someone among you stumbles. So the first major thing that comes out from this passage is that Paul says this: we need to be gentle toward the one who stumbles. So this is the opposite, by the way, of the Schadenfreude of watching a person stumble and enjoying it. This is, you see someone stumble in some way. They fall into an area of sin. They have a difficulty or misfortune in their life. And what he tells us is, in verse 1, he says, brethren, even if anyone is caught in any trespass, you who are spiritual, your response should be that you restore them with a spirit of gentleness. Now, often what you will get, maybe in a church setting or a religious setting, is if a person views themselves as being spiritual, meaning I know a lot of things about God, I have worked hard to make my life look the way that it should, upright and moral. A lot of times, someone in that position gets a disease that we would call judgmentalism, legalism. They put their chin up and their nose up a little higher. They look at other people. They're looking down on the people around them for their behavior. And when that's the case, when we feel good about where we are, sometimes our tendency is to respond to someone who stumbles with harshness, judgment, anger, saying, well, it makes sense that this would happen. Of course, you made the choices that you made. Of course, you stumbled. But what Paul says is that if you are spiritual, if your status before the Lord is that you are close with him, the Spirit is working within you, your tendency should be to seek to restore that person, not to be harsh with them, but to restore them with a spirit of gentleness. You may remember that last week when we talked about that aspect of the fruit of the Spirit, of gentleness, the way we defined it was saying strength or power under control, meaning the way that you behave towards someone when you have a degree of power over them. Now, when you see someone else stumble, they fall in an area of sin, they've tripped up in some area of their life, a lot of times that is a moment where you have some degree of power over them, meaning they're vulnerable. They're at a moment where you could hurt them if you come to them harshly. And the response that we are supposed to have as believers is to seek to restore a person and be gentle with them, even when we have the power to be otherwise. This is very important. As you progress and walk more closely with the Lord and God changes your life, you cannot give in to the temptation of starting to feel like you are better than other people around you. That is arrogance seeping its way into your life that would then destroy you. In the second part of that verse, Paul then says, being careful that knowing that you're also going to be tempted. You know, a lot of times if you look down on someone for whatever sin that they are dealing with in their life, you better be careful. You know, you may be next. You may be the person that needs gentleness from the others around you not long in the future. So we need to be gentle toward the one who stumbles. And the other way I would say this is that harshness, self-superiority, and envy, those things come from the flesh and not from the Spirit. So if you find yourself responding to the difficulties in other people's lives, whether it's because of their own decisions or whatever's going on, if you're responding to that with enjoyment, that is an issue where you need to look at your heart immediately and say, why is that? Is that coming from me being prideful, me being arrogant? Is it because I'm jealous of that person? Is there just something in me that's broken at this moment that I need to confess to the Lord? You should not be responding to the pain of others with enjoyment. Here's the next thing that Paul says in our little passage. He says we need to help with the burdens of others. Verse 2, he says, bear one another's burdens and thereby fulfill the law of Christ. So he says what he's calling the law of Christ here means bearing with the difficulties of other people, being passionate and careful and loving toward the people who are experiencing a burden in their life. And the question that this brought to my mind, and I think that all of us should probably ask, if you look at the relationships in your life all the way around, your friends, your family, are you a person that lightens the load of the people around you? Or are you a person who makes their load heavier with your expectations, with your demands, with the way you talk to them? Are you making somebody's burden heavier, or are you making it lighter? The call of a believer is not to be an anchor on someone else weighing them down. We need to be lightening the load. I mean, Jesus says exactly that. He says, come to me who are heavy and weary laden. My burden is light. My yoke is easy. That's the way that Jesus is. We should be that way too. You should not be a burdensome person in the people's lives that are around you. Difficulty with your expectations and the way that you place things on people. So we help with the burdens of others. We don't add to them. And here's the next one. I think this might be the key part of this passage. We need to approach every relationship with the people around us with humility. So this was the end of verse 1. He says, each one looking to yourself so that you too will not be tempted. So he says, restore them. Don't come to them harshly or judgmentally because you might be tempted later on. In verse 3, he says, for if anyone thinks he is something when he is nothing, he deceives himself. He deceives himself. There is nothing quicker to deceive ourselves than pride, arrogance. Now, what makes this difficult is that you experience your life through the prism of your life experience. You're seeing it through your eyes, you're hearing with your ears, you're feeling what you're feeling. But it's easy for us to get confused and think that we are the center of the universe when we're not. We're a part of it. It reminds me of a story that a professor of mine from seminary, I heard him tell one time. I will not be able to tell this nearly as well as he did. His name is Joel Gregory. He was a pastor. He had a big, deep, booming voice. He talked like this. And so I heard him give an illustration. And he said some preachers suffer from what we call the barnyard tragedy. Has anyone ever heard of the barnyard tragedy? I'm going to share it with you. So the barnyard tragedy, there was a rooster. And this rooster was on the farm. And every morning, the sun came up and the rooster would crow. And when the rooster would crow, everybody on the farm would wake up. The cows, the hens, the chickens, even the farmer and the farmer's wife. The rooster had a great deal of power. He would crow as the sun came up, and everyone would wake up. And things were going pretty well until the rooster came into some foul logic. Pause. Anyway, okay, that took a little while. Anyway, the rooster reversed cause and effect. And he began to think that the sun came up because he crowed and not the opposite. Every morning the sun was coming up, he would crow, and he started to think, I am the reason that the sun is coming up. And so the first thing that happened is that he became an insomniac rooster. He was afraid that if he went to sleep and didn't wake up in time, the sun wasn't going to come up if he didn't crow. And at the end of the story, they had to drag him off to the home for disturbed roosters, all because he had deceived himself. Pride, ego, arrogance does this with us. Now, that's a silly story, but I'd be willing to wager that you have known people in your life that felt like the sun was coming up because they were crowing. They felt like the world was spinning and the things that were happening because they were at the center of it. And there is nothing that deludes us and confuses our view of reality, distorts our view of the way things are, than our own pride, our own ego, and us thinking that we are the most important. The antidote to that is that we do need to learn how to be humble. Learn what our actual place is in the world. There's a quote that was, it's been attributed to C.S. Lewis, but he didn't actually say it. But the quote says something like, humility doesn't mean thinking less of yourself, it means thinking of yourself less. And now, he didn't actually say that. Someone pretended like he said that. But Lewis did say something else. He spoke about humility, and he said it this way. He said, do not imagine that if you meet a really humble man, he will be what most people call humble nowadays. He will not be a sort of greasy, smarmy person who is always telling you that, of course, he is nobody. Probably, all you will think about him is that he seemed a cheerful, intelligent chap, he's British, obviously, who took a real interest in what you say to him. If you do dislike him, it will be because you feel a little envious of anyone who seems to enjoy life so easily. He will not be thinking about humility. He will not be thinking about himself at all. If anyone would like to acquire humility, I think, tell him the first step. The first step is to realize that one is proud. And a biggish step, too. At least, nothing whatever can be done before it. If you think that you are not conceited, it means that you are very conceited indeed. So, the fake quote that I gave you at the beginning was not from Lewis. The real quote is much better. He says that being humble means understanding that you, by nature, are going to be proud and conceited. You are going to be self-centered. And what it means to be humble is to see the world actually as it is, to have an accurate view of yourself. So being humble does not mean you think that you are nothing, you think that you're not important, I'm awful. You've probably heard people try and feign humility in that way before. That's not humility. Humility means having an accurate view of yourself and ultimately seeing yourself and the world in the terms that God sees it. Not thinking that you are more important than you are just because you are you. There's something I noticed when I was playing sports and then even afterward. But sometimes what will happen is that a coach or a parent will film a sporting event. So say it's a football game, or in my case in college it was ultimate frisbee. The game would be filmed, and when you afterward are watching film with the entire team of guys or girls, what you'll notice is that the attention of each individual guy or girl is going where? On themselves, right? They're not even watching the full action of the game. They are watching themselves because their experience is, man, I'm the most important, so I'm going to watch. We live our lives that way unless we realize that we're proud and we change direction. What it means to be humble means to genuinely care about other people and to see the world accurately as God does. I had a buddy of mine when I was in college, and his name is Nick, one of my best friends, one of the smartest guys I've ever seen in my life, extremely highly intelligent. And one of the things that I noticed about him in the time that I was roommates with him and was friends with him was that he seemed to have a hobby of finding out what other people were interested in. So when we would go hang out and do things, what I would notice is that he would just pepper people with questions about what they cared about, what they did, what they were interested in. And so I would tell people, I think his hobby is finding out what other people are interested in. But I realized later, maybe a year or two later, that was not just a sign that Nick had the hobby of asking what other people liked. Nick was humble. He didn't go into a conversation looking to put his stamp on what was going on. He genuinely cared about the other person. And I think what this gets us toward is that if you want to be humble, the way that God can hammer that into you to change your view of the world is for you to be caring about the needs of others. If you really are taking on the burdens of other people around you, caring for them, being gentle when they make mistakes, that's the quickest way to get yourself out of your distortion field of your pride and ego and see everything else. The Spirit changes us through our relationships with other people. So if we are called to be humble in the way when we encounter other people, it's when you spend time with someone, it can't just be a means to an end. that I'm spending time with them because it's going to get me what I want. No, what the Spirit does in your life is that he will lead you to love people for exactly who they are, on his terms, not on yours or mine. The last thing from these few verses is it says this: bear your own load and don't compare yourself to others. Verses 4 and 5 say, but each must examine his own work, and then he will have reason for boasting in regard to himself alone, and not in regard to another. For each one will bear his own load. So on the one hand, we are called to lighten the burdens of those around us. On the other hand, we need to be able to bear our own load, not be a burden to others. Now, there are moments where, of course, you are going to be a burden to other people, and they need to pick you up. That's part of what the church is for. It's what families are for. So it's not saying that if you're in a season of life where you're a burden to someone else that you're doing anything wrong. It's not what it's saying. But we are called to lighten the load of others and, as much as we are able to hold ourselves up. And the way that he says it is this: if you are examining your behavior, you should not be doing it in comparison to the people around you. I mentioned before at the beginning of this that a lot of times the pleasure that we feel in watching the drama of other people comes from the fact of you saying, that person is so out of control, I must be all right. Things must be okay with me. Or you've probably seen this before with people that you've interacted with in your life. They will actively put down other people to make themselves feel better. That is not what we are called to do. Basically, what Paul's saying is, if you're going to examine your behavior before the Lord, and if you're going to boast in it, it needs to be in reference to God himself, not in reference to the other people around you. If any of you have kids, a lot of times if you catch a kid doing something that they shouldn't be doing, many times their quickest response is going to be what? They're going to say, but what this person did was way worse. My friends do way worse than me. My brother or sister did way worse than me. And usually your response is going to be what? That doesn't matter. I care about what you're doing. What is right and what is wrong? What are you supposed to do? What are you not supposed to do? I mean, if we come to the Lord and he is pointing out some area of our life, the Spirit is convicting you of an area of sin, and you say something like, yeah, but that guy that I work with, have you seen him? He's way worse than me. Does God care about that? No, obviously not. You need to bear your own load and not compare yourself to the people around you. Again, that's a very quick way to distort your view of reality, to be comparing yourself to the world or to other people around you. Now, we have to take for granted, the world is crazy. People are going to be doing crazy things around you. A couple of years ago, I came to the conclusion that I am never going to be surprised at sinful things that people around me do. I'm just not going to be surprised, or I won't be shocked. There are times you might feel some surprise, but I'm never going to be caught off guard that someone does something insane because of an area of sin in their life. That's just the way the world is. God doesn't care about you looking at that. What God cares about is you seeing the reality of what he is calling you to do and whether you're being obedient or not. And the quickest way that you can come to humble yourself before the Lord is to take yourself out of your distortion field of your own pride and ego and to love and care for the people around you. So if we're going to recapitulate all the things that we talked about tonight, it would be by saying this: we see evidence of the fruit of the Spirit in the way that, one, we think about ourselves, and in the way that we treat others. The Spirit working in your life will be evident if, one, you are thinking of yourself in a more humble way, or thinking of yourself less, or thinking of others more. And you will see evidence of the Spirit's action or not action in your life by the way you're treating the people around you. And now I've asked a variation of this question at the end of each of the last 3 weeks, but I think this is the application point for all of us. If you're looking at your life right now, and if people are looking at your life right now, if they see the way that you talk about yourself and the way that you treat other people, do they see the Holy Spirit in your actions and in your thoughts? I think that's a question we have to examine ourselves with. If someone were able to audit your internal thought life and see the way that you think about yourselves and others, would they see the Spirit there? If they see the way that you talk to your spouse, would they see the Spirit there? The way you talk to your kids, the way you talk to your friends, what you look at when no one's watching, would they see the Holy Spirit working in your life there? And if not, the answer to that is, one, you have to pray and ask the Lord and the Spirit to convict you and to change you. Or two, if you have never met the Lord yet, maybe you'll see the Holy Spirit's not working in my life yet because he's not living in me, and I need something different. And so the final thing I just would lay out to you is this. If you're wanting to know, where am I with the Lord right now? Where am I in obedience to him? Those two categories are very easy to examine. How am I thinking about myself? Is the entire world Do I feel like the whole thing revolves around me? Am I the rooster? And then second, am I treating people in a way that the Lord would have me do? Do I respond with harshness when they stumble? Do I respond with gentleness? Do I speak the truth to people? Do I take on the burdens of others, or do I add to them? We have to examine that, because God has called us to live in a unique, different way from the rest of the world. And are we doing it? Are we doing it, or are we not?